Football had always been my world. It was more than just a sport to me. It was my dream, my future, and my identity. From the moment I was old enough to walk, I had a ball at my feet. I lived for the sound of leather hitting the net, the roar of the crowd, even if it was just neighborhood kids, and the adrenaline that coursed through my veins during every match. My mother used to joke that I was born dribbling a football, and in a way, it felt true. She raised me alone in our small, humble apartment, working long hours to make ends meet. She was my biggest supporter, showing up to every game, rain or shine, cheering louder than anyone in the stands. When I turned 15, things started to click. I wasn't just good at football, I was great. Coaches took notice, and soon, I was recruited to join the best youth team in our town. It was a huge honor. This wasn't just some local group of boys messing around after school. This was a feeder team for the professional leagues, and I was thrilled beyond belief. For the first time, it felt like my hard work was paying off. The coach, a tall, gruff man named Coach Mason, was known for running a tight ship. He was tough but fair, or so I thought. I respected him, and he seemed to appreciate my dedication. But things would soon change in ways I never could have imagined. It was mid-season when everything came crashing down. Our team had been doing well, and we were on the verge of qualifying for a huge regional tournament. Scouts would be there from world-class football clubs, watching, taking note. It was every young player's dream to be noticed on that stage. I remember the excitement building in my chest as we prepared for our trip. I trained harder than ever, pushing myself to the limits, hoping this tournament would be the one to set me on the path toward a professional career. But just a day before we were set to leave, my mother came home from work with a look on her face that sent chills down my spine. Her eyes were red and swollen, as if she had been crying. I knew immediately that something was wrong. "Mom, what happened?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. She hesitated, her lips trembling as she struggled to find the words. Finally, she spoke. "Coach Mason called," she began, barely able to meet my eyes. He said you're not going on the trip." I stared at her, unable to comprehend what she was saying. "What? Why? Did I do something wrong?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "No, honey, you didn't do anything wrong. There's this new player. A boy with a lot of promise, but more importantly, his father. His father has money. A lot of money. He paid the coach to give his son your spot." I felt the ground shift beneath me. It was as though the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "He bought my spot?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Mom nodded, her face filled with sorrow. "They gave us an option," she continued, her voice trembling. "If we could match the bribe, you'd get to keep your place on the team. But we can't afford that, honey." My heart shattered into a million pieces. All those hours of training, all the sweat, the sacrifices, it had all been for nothing. Someone with deeper pockets could just walk in and take my dream away. I didn't go on the trip. That other kid, the one with the rich dad, took my place. The team lost in the semifinals, but it didn't matter. I was left behind, crushed, my confidence shattered. I remember standing at the edge of the pitch during one of the games, watching from the sidelines as my team, played without me. That was the moment something broke inside of me. It wasn't just about missing the tournament. It was about the injustice of it all. I had worked harder than anyone, earned my spot fair and square, but none of that mattered in the face of money and privilege. I was just a pawn in someone else's game. I quit the team a few weeks later. Coach Mason tried to convince me to stay, but I couldn't do it. Every time I saw him, I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. I couldn't look at him without thinking about how easily he had sold me out. One day, I whispered to myself, "I'll make him regret it." After leaving that team, I enrolled in another sports school across town. It wasn't as prestigious, but the coach was honest, and the players respected each other. I found solace in the fact that I was playing for myself, not for anyone else's approval. It wasn't about fame or recognition anymore, it was about the love of the game. Football was still in my blood, and I couldn't walk away from it completely. Years passed, and I grew stronger, faster, more skilled. I played in local leagues, worked with different coaches, and kept pushing myself. But I never forgot what had happened with Coach Mason. It fueled me, kept me sharp, reminding me that the world wasn't always fair, but I could still fight for what I deserve. When I was 18, an opportunity came knocking, a chance to play in the junior league. This was big. A real chance to show what I could do on a national stage. My new team was filled with talented players, all hungry for success, and we clicked instantly. We made it through the season with victory after victory, and before I knew it, we were in the finals. And that's when fate threw me a curveball. Our opponent in the final match? None other than my old team, the team I had left years ago. The team coached by none other than Coach Mason. I couldn't believe it when I saw the bracket. The memories of that betrayal flooded back, fresh and painful. But I wasn't the same kid I had been back then. I was stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. I had a chance, finally, to settle the score. In the days leading up to the match, I trained harder than ever. My teammates noticed something different in me, a fire that hadn't been there before. They didn't know about my past with Coach Mason, but they could sense that this match meant more to me than just a trophy. When the day of the final arrived, the tension was electric. The stadium was packed with fans, the air buzzing with excitement. But for me, it wasn't about the crowd or the glory. It was about redemption. As we stepped onto the field, I spotted Coach Mason standing on the sidelines with his team. He hadn't changed much, still tall, still gruff, still that same calculating look in his eyes. But when he saw me, something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe even fear. I didn't care. I was here to win. From the moment the whistle blew, I was in the zone. Every pass, every tackle, every shot, I was relentless. I could see the frustration building on Coach Mason's face as his team struggled to keep up with us. The rich kid who had taken my place years ago was still on the team, but he was no match for me. It was the second half when I scored my first goal. The crowd erupted, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel the satisfaction of knowing that Coach Mason was watching. But I wasn't done yet. As the minutes ticked by, I scored again, then again. A hat trick, 3 goals, each one a dagger to the heart of the man who had once sold me out for a few dollars. When the final whistle blew, we were champions. We had destroyed them 3-0. I was the hero of the match, and as I stood there, soaking in the cheers and applause, I couldn't help but glance over at Coach Mason. He was standing on the sidelines, his face pale, his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't say a word, but I could see the defeat in his eyes. He knew what I had done. He knew that this wasn't just a victory for me, it was revenge. Coach Mason was dismissed from his position not long after that. His team had failed to produce results for years, and this final humiliation was the last straw. It was poetic justice. He had sold me out to keep his job, and in the end, he lost it anyway. For a while, I thought that was the end of the story. I had gotten my revenge, and life moved on. I kept playing football, eventually landing a spot on a semi-professional team. My dream of becoming a professional player was still alive, and I was doing everything I could to make it a reality. But life has a way of throwing surprises your way when you least expect them. It was a few years after that fateful match when I ran into someone unexpected. I was in my early 20s, playing for a mid-tier club, when a new assistant coach was hired. His name was Daniel, and from the moment he joined the team, I could tell there was something off about him. He was charming, sure, everyone liked him. But there was something beneath the surface, something calculating. At first, I didn't pay much attention. I was too focused on my own game. But as the season went on, I started to notice little things. How Daniel seemed to take an interest in my performance, how he would offer unsolicited advice, always with that same smile that never quite reached his eyes. One night, after a particularly grueling practice, I found myself alone in the locker room. Daniel walked in, leaning casually against the doorframe. "You're quite the player," he said, his tone conversational. "Thanks," I replied, pulling off my boots. "I've been watching you," he continued. "You're talented. Really talented. But you know, talent only gets you so far." I raised an eyebrow, unsure of where this was going. "Football," he said, stepping closer, "isn't just about what happens on the field. It's about connections, politics, money." Something in the way he said money made my stomach turn. "You should know that better than anyone," Daniel added, his smile widening. I froze, my mind racing. He couldn't know, there was no way he could know. But before I could respond, he leaned in closer. "I know about Coach Mason," he whispered. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at Daniel, trying to process what he had just said. How could he know about Coach Mason? About what happened all those years ago? "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Daniel chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, come on. Don't play dumb. I know everything. About how he sold you out, about how you got your revenge. And I have to say, I'm impressed." I clenched my fists, my anger rising. "What do you want?" Daniel's smile faded, replaced by something colder, more sinister. "You see, I'm not just some assistant coach. I have connections, powerful connections, and I know people who would love to hear about how you destroyed Coach Mason's career. People who could make things difficult for you." I stared at him, my mind racing. Was he blackmailing me? "What do you want?" I repeated, my voice low. Daniel's smile returned. "It's simple, really. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Help me out, do a few things for me, and we'll call it even. Otherwise, well, let's just say your little secret might not stay a secret for long." I had spent years chasing my dream, fighting for every opportunity, proving myself on and off the field. And now I was faced with a choice: give in to Daniel's demands, or risk everything I had worked for. But as I stared at him, something shifted inside me. I had been wronged before, betrayed by the very people who were supposed to support me. And I had fought back. I had gotten my revenge. But this time, I wouldn't be playing by anyone else's rules. I leaned back, crossing my arms over my chest, and gave Daniel a small, cold smile. "You think you can blackmail me?" I asked, my voice calm. "You think I'm afraid of you?" Daniel's smile faltered. "I think you'd be smart to play along," he said. I stood up, taking a step closer to him, my eyes locked on his. "I'm not that kid anymore," I said quietly. "And I'm not afraid of you. You want to try and ruin me? Go ahead. But you should know, I'm not done getting revenge." Daniel's face paled, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "I've taken down one coach before," I continued, my voice deadly calm. "And I can do it again. Getting into the best team in town was no small feat, but I had done it. After years of hard work, sacrifices, and overcoming the betrayal from Coach Mason, I finally found myself where I had always dreamed, playing for Starling City FC, the most prestigious football club in town. This wasn't just any team. This was the club every kid in town dreamed of playing for. The history of Starling City FC was legendary. Countless championships, a feeder team for national and international leagues, and a fan base that worshipped the players as if they were gods. For me, this was the pinnacle of everything I had worked for, everything I had bled for. But getting into the team was only the first step. I wasn't there to just be another player. I was there to lead. My first season was tough. The competition was fierce, and the stakes were high. Every player on the team was as hungry as I was, and the level of play was beyond anything I had experienced before. It was a different world, one where even the slightest mistake could cost you everything. But I thrived under the pressure. I pushed myself harder than anyone. Every practice, every game, I gave it my all. I studied my opponents relentlessly, understanding their weaknesses, exploiting their flaws. And over time, the coaches noticed. It was the second season when they made me captain. Being named captain wasn't just an honor, it was a responsibility. Leading Starling City FC wasn't like leading any ordinary team. The expectations were sky high, and the pressure of representing the city's pride weighed heavily on my shoulders. But I welcomed it. I had spent years fighting for this moment, clawing my way up from nothing, and now I had the chance to prove my worth. But leadership isn't just about giving orders on the field. It's about keeping the team together through adversity, guiding your teammates when things go wrong, and making the tough decisions when no one else can. It was a lesson I learned quickly. Among my teammates, there were those who were fiercely loyal, players who would follow me into battle without hesitation. But there were others who resented my rapid rise, who thought I hadn't paid my dues. One of those players was Jason Novak, the team's star forward. Jason had been with the club for years before I arrived. He was a fan favorite, the kind of player who had natural talent and knew it. He had a cocky swagger about him, always expecting to be the star of the show. But when I became captain, he saw it as a slight, a blow to his ego. From day one, there was tension between us. At first, I thought it was just normal rivalry. Jason was competitive, and so was I. But as the season progressed, I started to realize that it went deeper than that. Jason wasn't just challenging me on the field. He was undermining me off of it. The cracks in the team started to show during one of our biggest matches of the season. We were up against our fiercest rivals, Hartford United, and the game was crucial for securing our position at the top of the league. The stadium was packed, the atmosphere electric, and all eyes were on me as the team's captain. From the very beginning, things went wrong. Passes were missed, positioning was sloppy, and the chemistry that had made us one of the best teams in the league seemed to have vanished. I could sense the frustration building in the players, and it wasn't long before Jason began to lash out. "Get it together, Captain," Jason snarled after another failed play, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I ignored him at first, focusing on the game, but he wasn't done. Jason was actively sabotaging plays, calling for the ball when he wasn't in position, refusing to pass to other teammates, and taking reckless shots at the goal. It was as if he was trying to make me look like a failure as a captain. At halftime, things boiled over. In the locker room, Jason confronted me in front of the entire team. "You think you're a leader?" he sneered, stepping toward me. "You think you deserve that armband? You're just a kid who got lucky." I clenched my fists, the anger rising inside me, but I kept my cool. "This isn't about me," I said evenly. "It's about the team. We need to win this game, and that won't happen if you keep playing for yourself." Jason laughed, his eyes narrowing. "Don't think I don't see what's going on. You want all the glory. You want to be the hero. But newsflash, Captain, I'm the one they came to see. Not you." The tension in the room was thick, the other players watching in uncomfortable silence. I knew I had to keep control. If I let this escalate, it would tear the team apart. But Jason wasn't done yet. "I'll be the one carrying this team to victory," he spat. "Not you. And when this is all over, they'll remember my name, not yours." The second half of the game was brutal. Jason continued to undermine me, but I refused to let him get the best of me. I stayed focused, rallying the rest of the team, pushing them to give everything they had. In the final minutes of the game, we were tied, and it was anyone's match to win. Jason, true to form, tried to take the glory for himself. He went for a reckless shot, ignoring an open pass that would have sealed the game. The ball sailed over the crossbar, and the crowd groaned in disappointment. But I wasn't giving up. With seconds left on the clock, I intercepted a pass from the opposing team and sprinted down the field. Jason was nowhere to be seen. I was on my own. I could hear the roar of the crowd as I approached the goal, the defenders closing in on me. I didn't hesitate. I took the shot. The ball flew into the top corner of the net, and the stadium exploded in cheers. We had won. As my teammates surrounded me in celebration, Jason stood off to the side, his face twisted with anger and frustration. I had done what he couldn't. I had led the team to victory. But I knew this wasn't over. Jason's resentment only grew after that match. He couldn't stand the fact that I had outshone him, that the fans were chanting my name instead of his. He started spreading rumors, whispering behind my back, trying to turn the team against me. At first, it was small things, comments about how I was lucky or how I didn't deserve to be captain. But soon, it escalated. One evening after practice, I found a note taped to my locker. It was simple but chilling. "Watch your back." I crumpled it up and tossed it aside, but the unease lingered. Jason wasn't just trying to get under my skin anymore. He was threatening me. Over the next few weeks, things took a darker turn. My locker was vandalized, my equipment mysteriously went missing, and during one match, someone slashed the tires of my car while I was on the field. I knew it was Jason, but I had no proof. And then, one night, things came to a head. It was the night before the championship final, a game that would define my career, the team's legacy, and everything I had worked for. I was staying late at the stadium, going over plays and strategies in my head, when I heard a noise coming from the locker room. I approached cautiously, my heart racing, and when I opened the door, I saw Jason rifling through my locker. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. Jason spun around, his face a mixture of shock and rage. "You weren't supposed to see this," he muttered, his voice low. I stepped forward, my fists clenched. "See what? You trying to sabotage me?" "Sabotage the team." Jason's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw the full extent of his hatred. "You've taken everything from me," he hissed. "That should have been my armband, my team. I've worked my whole life for this, and you waltzed in here like you own the place." "You did this to yourself," I shot back. "You're so focused on your ego, you forgot what it means to be part of a team." Jason's face twisted with fury. "You think you're better than me? You think you deserve this? You don't know what it's like to be me, to have everything ripped away because of some kid who got lucky." Before I could respond, Jason lunged at me. We grappled, knocking over benches and lockers in our struggle. But I wasn't backing down. I had fought too hard, too long, to let him take this away from me. Finally, I shoved him back, sending him crashing into a row of lockers. He sat there, breathing heavily, glaring up at me with pure hatred. "This isn't over," Jason spat. "I'll ruin you. I'll make sure you lose everything." The next day, we took to the field for the championship game. The stadium was packed, the air electric with anticipation. But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me after my confrontation with Jason. As the game began, I kept my focus. We were up against one of the toughest teams in the league, and every second counted. But throughout the match, I could feel Jason's presence like a dark cloud hanging over me. At halftime, we were tied. The tension in the locker room was palpable, and I could sense Jason watching me, waiting for me to slip up. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. In the second half, I played the game of my life. Every pass, every tackle, every move was precise, calculated. And in the final minutes, with the score tied and the clock winding down, I found myself in front of the goal once again. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. I took the shot. The ball sailed into the net, and the stadium erupted in cheers. We were champions. As the team celebrated around me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. I had won. I had proven myself as a leader, as a captain, as a player. But I wasn't done yet. After the game, as the celebrations continued in the locker room, I approached Jason. He was sitting alone, staring at the floor, his face pale and expressionless. "You lost," I said quietly, standing over him. "And now you have to live with it." Jason looked up at me, his eyes filled with anger and resentment. "This isn't over," he whispered. I smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "Oh, but it is." And then I handed him a letter, one that I had written weeks ago, after I found out about his sabotage, his threats, his attempts to ruin me. It was a letter addressed to the team's management, detailing everything Jason had done, with evidence to back it up. He opened the letter, his face draining of color as he read the words. "You can't do this," he stammered, his voice trembling. I leaned in, my voice low and steady. I already did. Jason was dismissed from the team the next day. His reputation was ruined, and no other club would touch him. As for me, I kept playing, kept leading, and kept winning.